You're listening to Vocal Distortion here on FM 89, your Chicagoland home for hardcore heavy metal and everything in between. I'm your host, Austin Paulson, back again for a very special edition of our show. We have, we're a Chicagoland show first and foremost. We love supporting our local scene, and we have some very special local guests with us today. A fairly recent project that has released their self-titled debut EP. It is out now for you to listen to. There are some pre-orders as far as cassettes. You might know our guests from projects like Immortal Bird, Coliseum, Yautja, but this is very much its own thing. I am, of course, talking about Ray and Kayhan of Wretched Blessing. How are you guys?
Yo.
Hey, we're good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
No, thank you for taking the time out. First of all, I just want to say congratulations. This thing is awesome.
Thank
I love
you.
listening to it. It's
Thanks.
got riffs, it's got transitions, it's got lyricism, it's got eerie ass samples. How does it feel now that it's out there in the world?
It feels good. I think it's nice having a pretty quick turnaround time compared to some other things like full-length bands with other projects. I've never had the experience of having something shelved or delayed for a while because of a label or anything, but things do kind of get prolonged in that process sometimes. But with this, it was sort of just like, we booked the studio time, we got our mixes back. If anything, we dragged our feet a little bit. Our producer, Pete Grossman, was super quick getting everything to us, and sometimes we took a little while to reply. But all said, yeah, it was a very quick process, which is so nice. It was refreshing to be able to have ideas, practice them, record them, mix and master them, and put them out like within a few months as opposed to a couple of years or something.
Yeah, it was very satisfying to do it all very quickly and just kind of do it all on our terms.
I would say you guys have probably known each other and been performing together kind of here and there, running in similar circles for the better part of like a decade. You know, I got to see, I think both of your projects perform maybe a couple years ago at the Empty Bottle. Yautja was on tour with the Portrayal of Guilt. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was a great show.
It's so cool to see you guys both kind of come together in this one project. For maybe those listening, did this form perhaps like early on last year and it's been kind of taking shape over time, and here we have the EP release?
That's pretty accurate. Yeah. Like we are dating. We are a couple, just for full transparency, but we were like, yeah, we like, obviously we're going to make music together. And we had been to the practice space and jammed and written stuff at home, for months and months. But we kind of had to like set some hard deadlines to like actually form the songs and write a set. And I think setting those hard deadlines is what actually got the formation to happen. Played one show and the studio time.
How much Wild Cherry Pepsi was drank during this time?
Way more than should have been consumed. Yeah, I'm a soda fiend. It's definitely up there in my drugs of choice. Trying to cut back, but I do love Wild Cherry Pepsi for sure.
Ray, any vices while recording? Any like
Oh,
Wild Cherry Pepsi?
I mean, this is a Chicago station. We're in a weed legal state. I can speak freely. No real crazy vices other than the usual kind of THC and caffeine that you might expect.
Sour candy.
Sour candy is helpful.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it was a pretty chill process. Didn't really have that many vices that I don't already have in order to get me through.
They just amplified stuff, yeah.
I guess, when you listen to it, it sounds very organic and natural, and it sounds like, the process for writing and recording a lot of this stuff, and, obviously you have a connection, but, with there not being sort of like, you're not trying to like force it. It feels like very like maybe reactionary. Like, this is just like coming out of me at this moment. This is what we're going to write. Would you say that is a pretty accurate description of like how a lot of these songs came together?
I think a couple of them came together from kind of more planning and more formal jams, and with the intention of this will be the second song that we write. But then towards the end, I think we just sort of had riff ideas that were coming together more naturally, like jams, and that was very cool. I think Anathematic is more of like a reactionary song because I wrote the main couple of riffs for that, and I had sort of the lyrical content in mind already. It's very much like a pro-Palestine song, and I think there is like Middle Eastern influence in that song. At least that's what I was going for. So that one kind of came along a little bit later and sort of came together at the same time, lyrics and music. Whereas most of the time, I feel like the music gets written and then we think about what we want the lyrics to be.
Yeah, I think something that came pretty naturally too was like me or Ray writing a couple of riffs or part of a song, and then the other person kind of finalizing it, or like, you know, writing the last two parts of the song seemed to come super naturally for us. Like, oh, I've got this thing that like fits perfectly with that, or like, check this out, this gels perfectly with that riff. And I also think that just having two people there writing stuff, as opposed to another guitar player and a bass player, or even just a bass player and a vocalist or something, kind of takes like the pressure off, and some of the, like, you know, not tension, but just kind of like, oh, I'm the bass player and I know my part, and the drummer and the guitar player are sitting here trying to figure this thing out for 2 hours. Like, it was just me and Ray writing stuff made things feel a little bit more natural, I think.
That song in particular that you mentioned, Anathematic, like that is like, that riff has been stuck in my head ever since this came out. Like, that is a hell of a riff.
Thank you.
I am so curious, and this is kind of a question we ask a lot on the podcast version of this show. What to you maybe makes a riff? Like, what, as a listener or as a musician, like what does a riff need to have? Like, what do you look for in a riff?
I like, for no matter how weird the riff is, for it to have like some kind of a center or some sort of an anchor that I can kind of lock into. It doesn't necessarily have to have that, but it definitely helps, because I associate riff with like catchiness, even though, as I think we all know, riffs sometimes are not catchy at all, and sometimes they don't need to be. Sometimes you're going for something like angular and weird and super dissonant, but that can be catchy in and of itself because it's like ear catching. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to walk around humming it, but it's something that sticks out to you. So like a riff needs to stick out as an independent idea. I like when it's not just the guitar doing something. I like when it's sort of a dynamic thing between all of the elements, or some of the band elements. But yeah, I don't know. For me to call it a riff and not just like part of the song, it needs to be more of kind of a standout feature thing, whether that's because it is really catchy in the traditional sense, or it catches you in an untraditional sense.
Kayhan, how do you feel about the riff?
Yeah, I mean that Ray wrote that main riff in that song, and that, I think that is one of the standout parts of the record. Yeah, it has to sound good and be catchy in some way, whether that's just like you're remembering it because it caught your ear, or it's like actually has a hook to it. I also think it has to be fun to play too. Like that appeals to me as a musician. Like, is this riff fun to play? You know, there's some riffs that sound awesome that suck to play, and vice versa, you know? But yeah, that's definitely a fun one. The anathematic riff. Well, I remember I came home from work and Ray was like, I wrote a new song. And I was like, that is sick. That's going to be one of them. That's going to be a standout song for sure.
And, you know, based on some of my reading, some of the interviews you've done, some of these have, like, at least riff-wise parts, sections, maybe have been sitting perhaps in your back pocket. I think I read like Pseudo Ascension, Kayhan, was like maybe a riff you'd had for a while. You were hoping to maybe use for another project that was like, you know what, it works pretty well for this. Like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that I was just like, this. I don't know when I wrote that a few years ago, but it didn't fit in any bands I was playing with at the time or have played with. And I was like, should I start a new band that just sounds like this? Or should Ray and I just start our hardcore death metal punk band and put our ideas into that, you know? Not that it's not intentional. It's not like we're just funneling stuff that we didn't use for other bands. It's just stuff that we're writing that fits in that domain, I guess.
One thing that you mentioned earlier, as far as like, I think there's like a lot of really great dynamics. There's like changes in tempo. I mean, the ability to transition almost like kind of like stop on a dime and just go in a completely other direction, like so naturally. I find that so much on this record. The first track alone is so fun. It's like such a false sense of comfort. Like it kind of like lulls you in. It kind of like, oh, this is nice. I'm like the repetition of the song. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like what's going to happen? And then just like fades right into the most like chaotic song on the record, maybe.
Yeah.
When I looked up some of there's like the live video of you guys performing in Birmingham, I guess kind of like a hometown show for you. Pulling that out what was the reaction like going from, the song Incubation into Spurious Ovation?
I mean, it felt cool because it was an opportunity to sort of warm up and feel the room. But in terms of like the crowd reaction, I have no idea because I was like blindingly nervous and focused on just like premiering this band in a way that I wasn't going to look back on later and just like want to fucking die. So I'm not sure. Like, obviously, maybe not obviously, but overall, it was very well received, not only because I think we did okay, but because it is Kayhan's hometown and, we had family and friends there and it was very, very supportive. And I was on all borrowed gear from Carter, who's the drummer for Coliseum and for Legion, and Kayhan is in Legion and Legion played that show. Like just friendship and intertwining abound. So like the overall reaction was great. As far as the reaction to that transition, I have no idea. I really appreciated the time to just sit up there and play a little bit before I had to start blasting, but yeah.
It's I love that song is on the record now too, because originally it was like something that Ray and I had been playing together, and we were like, this obviously does not fit with the rest of this music, but it's like, yeah, it kind of does in a way. But also we were talking about the playing your first show without having any recorded music opportunity, so like you can start your set sounding however you want because no one has any idea how you sound, and then you can totally do a 180 on them too. And that was the plan, but I think it formed into an actual cool intro for the record, and I'm stoked it's on there.
Mm-hmm, me too.
Spurious Ovation, first single for the record, definitely blew me away when I heard it. I loved like the dynamic of both of your like vocals going back and forth. When I hear that line, like when I was reading it, you will regret this time wasted watching others living. It like felt like it felt like you were like shaking me by the shoulders almost. Like it kind of reminds me of like there's a Punch song called Do It Yourself, and every time I hear it, like Megan from Punch, I feel like just like get off your ass and like do something. Stop like looking at other people live on your phone. I don't know if that was the intention, but it definitely was like like.
I mean, yeah, I think it can resonate with everybody. Like that song is a little bit more pointed, but I think we've all been there before, unfortunately.
I'm sure as like, creative people, like I love to draw, for instance, right? And, sometimes like I like that maybe, if you scroll on your phone or like social media, sometimes there's like a lot of great inspiration for that. Sometimes I feel like I kind of get locked and be like, that person's so good. I can't like, why should I even like, fuck this? Like, as a creative person yourselves, like, how do you maybe continue to push like Ray, I know you also make art through like posters and drawings and designs and stuff like that. Like how do you maybe get over some of those obstacles like creative blocks and stuff like that? I'm curious.
What obstacles again?
Well, sorry, I know there was a lot. So like I feel like maybe creative people they're probably their own worst critic. And so sometimes when I like look at like, through my phone and watching other people's create, I'm like, well, this person does it so well. Like, why should I do it? I'll just like crumble a drawing up or whatever. And maybe even through music, it's the same thing. Where like, man, this riff like sucks. Like, I hate it. Like,
totally. No, I totally get that. So yes, comparison is very much the thief of joy. And I feel like with music, I kind of avoid it because I don't know. I feel like with music, you can't compare your music to other people's music. So I don't really struggle with it. But in terms of musicianship, like with individual instruments, like, yeah, I think about that stuff all the time. Like I compare myself to other drummers and I try to just take a deep breath and try to just maintain and improve like my skills in the direction that I want to and really just have that journey be more personal. For art, I do occasionally have some imposter syndrome because I am like close friends with some absolutely unbelievable visual artists who are just incredible, like multidisciplinary geniuses, like absolute masters of their craft. So that's just something that I let inspire me, and I'm just really lucky to be in the same orbit as those people. But like, I don't know, I'm trying to do a different thing, and I feel like I've really only tried to explore visual art since around 2020, and I do know that I'm getting better and discovering more things that I like to do. Like I just started getting into like plasticine and like stop motion type sculpting, and I'm loving that, and like embroidery or what have you. So it's like I'm just trying to have fun and focus on the things that are making me happy and the things that I feel like I'm getting better at. With art, I almost fear that if I get better at art and anyone starts to recognize it on any level, I might start to compare myself to people if I start to consider them my peers, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Speaking of art, I love the album artwork. Kiki's 1313 is that how you pronounce the?
I believe so. Yeah, she's based out of Mexico, and she's just absolutely incredible. She's like our age, not your age, but I mean Kayhan's age. She's been at it for so long and does the most like grotesque, weird, intricate, beautiful, disturbing stuff.
Yeah, and I'm not super familiar with her work. I mean, I've definitely seen the covers of the Immortal Bird records. Compared to those, like definitely seems kind of a little different. It almost, has like that kind of collage feel. Like what about this particular piece spoke to you about, like, oh, this is perfect for what this is going to be?
Well, I was kind of just using her and her work as a jumping off point because I don't know, I'm like, wait, is this like privileged information? Like whatever. Okay, so like the Immortal Bird cover for the next album may or may not be Kiki's 1313 again. I'm just gonna say, but like I had her on my mind, but I knew that I wanted the Wretched Blessing thing to be totally different from Immortal Bird because it is totally different. But I had just been looking at her art, and I wondered to myself if she had anything that was a little bit outside of her kind of like traditional style, if you will.
Yeah.
And I found I Rustle, which is that piece, and I was like, whoa, like this fuses so many cool elements of what I love about her work, but it looks really different. Like I had never seen her do anything that was in that collage style with like that big block of color, and like love the hands, like I was all about it. And so I asked Kayhan if he liked it because we didn't want to do something that was too similar to Immortal Bird, but he really liked it. So it seemed perfect too, because like, Wretched Blessing, it's almost like a child of some sort, and there's like, that element to the art, but it's like not in like too weird of a way. I don't know. I really liked the art. I wasn't going to force it if nothing of hers fit, but it just seemed like it fit.
I love it. It's definitely eye-catching for sure. One of the other things I wanted to talk about absolutely was the kind of like the ambient kind of noise sampled interlude. I did not remember this part of Spy Kids 2. Where, like, had you been holding this in your back pocket, or like was this? Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So I really loved the original Spy Kids. I did see Spy Kids 2 in theaters, and I remember being like, wow, what's Alexa Vega up to? She's my hero, but like didn't really hold on to much of the content. And then years later, like within the last few years, that clip got really big, like Gen Z found it, and I was like, oh wow, yeah, oh my God. But before that, I had heard it out of context, and I was like, what is that from? And I looked it up, and it was Spy Kids 2, and I was like, that's crazy. And then within maybe a few months to a year of that, it kind of like blew up again, and I thought, oh wow, okay. And then I rewatched Spy Kids 2, and I was like, it'd be awesome to sample this. It'd be really cool, but I don't really know like what I would sample it for. And it worked really well for this because I didn't want to do an EP with like a bunch of filler. I didn't want to just like throw in a random sample, but I wanted to have fun. So this was a cool opportunity where like I feel like the things he's saying are very relevant to the song that it leads into, even if it is like in a jokey kind of way. Like it goes pretty hard. Like I really like.
It's like lyrically, it could be relevant to almost every song.
Yeah.
I love, yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, we did that whole track at home in our little makeshift studio. So it was fun to mess around a little bit there.
Yeah, it was like almost like a chopped and screwed version of like the original or something like that. So fun. I remember seeing that in the theater as well. And then maybe kind of reminded me of like, man, I saw like Spy Kids 3D, and it was like maybe
Yeah.
the last movie that I'd really with the red and blue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was so weird about that one was like they, without telling you it's time to wear the 3D glasses, they're like, all right, everybody, now put on your glasses. And I'm like, man, that really just like doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
It's
Is there maybe a particular, like maybe through like your record collection, is there like maybe a favorite use of a sample like in a song?
ooh,
That's such a good question.
man, I don't know.
For me, I don't like the one that always comes to mind. And it's always like maybe a song or an album that gets you to check something out or dig, obviously with this, I'm like, where did this come from? Oh, Spy Kids 2, that's crazy. I remember the Magruder Grind self-titled has like a bunch of sampling, and
Oh,
I like it's like Tetsuo the Iron Man. I'm like, what the hell is that? I gotta watch that movie. Or I think it has like Boys in the Hood or whatever. I'm like, this is like
Yeah.
the wildest record ever.
yeah.
That's
No,
such a good question. Like, I'm gonna think about that a lot now. But oh man, yeah.
Has other media like film or video games or TV, has it like that ever influenced your work maybe in the past or in the future? Like,
Oh yeah, I mean we're both huge consumers of movies and television and books, and like I'm a huge video game person. Ray is not a huge gamer, but like loves video game music and like obviously the art in video games.
if I remember reading correctly, Ray, were you like featured on Doom Eternal? Like, did you sing for that?
I did, yeah. So actually, when Immortal Bird was in the studio, at least I think the timing of this is right. When Immortal Bird was in the studio recording our 2019 album, Mick Gordon, the guy who did the score, put out an open call for metal vocalists to be part of his heavy metal choir to do like growls and screams and chants and stuff for the Doom Eternal soundtrack. And my drummer Matt is like obsessed with Doom, and he's a huge gamer, and he loves the soundtrack. And we'd been listening to the 2016 soundtrack a ton. Like we listened to it so much, and like I loved it already. And he was like, you should go for it. And I was like, okay. And so I submitted a few YouTube videos, and then a few weeks later got an email being like, with like a devil emoji in the subject line from Mick Gordon. I was like shitting myself.
That's awesome.
So excited. So anyway, I got that email, did that, and like went to Austin during South by weekend, which was hell on earth, but really interesting. And recorded all those little vocal things with like a bunch of other vocalists that people know, like Sven from Aborted, and a Nature, formerly of Tenger Cavalry, R.I.P. And I'm trying to think of more people, but it's kind of a blur. But yeah, it was really, really cool, and getting to do that was amazing, and definitely like one of the coolest things I'll ever do.
Yeah.
That's
Very
so
jealous.
sick. You guys live together, obviously you're partners. Is there like maybe a particular movie or series that like, are you diving into anything as of late? Like you watching, binging
We
anything?
love Scavenger's Reign. We love Invincible. I'm trying to think of more. I loved Fallout. I finished it. Kayhan hasn't finished it.
Finished Fallout, yeah.
Kayhan, go.
I'm familiar with the lead actress because I think she's in. My partner and I watched Yellow Jackets,
Yeah.
and like that show is like fucking wild. But I want to check out Fallout for sure.
It's so good.
It's fun. It's really over the top.
They
and
did
fun.
great. I've never played the games, but I was like so into the show. Loved it.
That's awesome.
We loved Scavenger's Reign. Love Invincible. We were a little disappointed with the last season of True Detective.
By a little disappointed, I mean like, oh man.
But yeah, I mean, constantly watching movies. Yeah.
We love horror movies. We love horror and sci-fi a lot. We saw that movie Stop Motion. It's a new horror movie, newish. It's like a year old.
Yeah, it's great.
It's incredible. What was that other one that we watched? The like kind of like demonic.
Where Evil Lurks. Or
Yeah,
When Evil
When
Lurks.
Evil Lurks or Where Evil Lurks. It's oh my
I
god.
think it's in Argentina.
Oh damn! All right, I gotta check this out.
Yes.
It's awesome. It's over the top.
Yeah, we like that kind of stuff. We were looking the other day for like non-traditional animation type stuff too. Like, what do we start
Oh,
to watch?
we were watching Fire and Ice.
We threw on Fire and Ice, and then we looked at like a whole list of things. We're always kind of trying to find new cool stuff to watch.
We watched. I think it came out maybe a couple years ago. It was like stop motion film. I think the guy who did like maybe some stuff for like Jurassic Park. It's like God something.
Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about.
It was
Yeah,
amazing.
It's like crazy and like scary and weird and took forever. Is that the one?
Yes,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
I don't know why I can't think of what it's called either, but I've seen it.
It was so fun to watch.
It's insane. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was like, making that movie for like over 10 years or
Yeah.
something.
I watched Coraline for the millionth time the other day and did more research, and it's just like the amount of talent and time that it took to make that. It's just, you can appreciate every single frame of just being what an achievement. Anyway, I'm just really nerdy.
No, I love that. The one other thing I wanted to touch about the record, the final track. I love the like the kind of cleans in the atmosphere. It sounds like very like cavernous, but also very like isolating. Like I feel like when I listen to it, I feel like I'm in the room with you guys, and maybe that is kind of a testament to Pete Grossman, who listeners may know from his band High Priest. But I mean, he's recorded everybody. He's worked with Immortal Bird before, working on the latest Immortal Bird record. I'm curious to know, what is it like working with Pete Grossman versus maybe someone like Dave Attero or Scott Evans? Like, what makes him the perfect candidate for a record like this?
Oh man, working with Pete was great. Made everything super comfortable, and like as far as like getting sounds and everything like that, like doing the shootout with different amps and pedals and getting everything, he made it so easy. And yeah, like just driving down the road kind of to his studio every day was super chill too. But I think he creates an awesome environment to make some cool sounds. And he was like, that was, I just had the song written. He as far as like, oh, let's try these effect pedals and this amp for this clean part in the beginning of the song, and then we'll do this and double this, like very much produced, as far as the actual tone and sounds of everything. And yeah, he making that song specifically, Mirror Vulture. I remember hearing like the first mix he sent back, and I was like, oh my God, like I didn't even hear that when we were tracking this, like, or when he played the rough mix back in the studio. So yeah, he's amazing. This is the first time I've worked with him, but definitely want to work with him again already,
Yeah, I've worked with Pete a lot, and that's why I knew that I really wanted to do this with him, because he's recorded me on any instrument that you can think of in like so many contexts. And he's such a professional, and he has such a good, kind, helpful, honest way about him just all the time. That's the person that he is. And it's just this amazing combination of someone that really knows what they're doing and who genuinely cares about your music and wants to know what you want and knows how to achieve that. And I want to work with him on, anything and everything, because he can do it all. And yeah, he's just been awesome to work with, and he did a really, really great job with this, and was just very, very thoughtful and patient and like down for things. And his enthusiasm feeds into how your performances are. Like if he's into what's going on, like you're gonna get good takes, and like that's just an effortless thing for him. Whereas I think working with other people, they have been, obviously very encouraging and very cool and nice, but there's this friendship element. There's this like kernel of friendship that's like at the core of all of it with Pete, just because I've known him for a really long time. I've known him and been working with him since I was 22. So there's like a trust there. He's a good dude. I like sitting on that couch. I feel really comfortable doing pretty much whatever. So yeah, it's really nice. I love working with the other people that I've worked with, but this is like a unique thing, and it feels very homey.
That's so nice to hear. The other one thing I had about the song was there's like a quick break, like a rest. And when it came in the song, I was like, I just laughed to myself. It's like, this is so fucking cool. That's it. That's all I wanted to say. Like, that was a really cool part.
The kind of like sucked the air out of the room.
It was awesome. Yeah. Like I forget where I feel like I've heard that like so few. And I'm just like, when it cut out, I was like, damn, that goes hard. That's awesome. Yeah, that's it. I'd like to maybe kind of take a step back to maybe the beginning, and maybe I'll like interject myself here a little bit with like, I think a lot of people maybe in their like musical journey, they have like older people in their life to kind of like show them new things, or like, like I didn't really have like the older person to like show me like this hardcore record or a metal record. I eventually moved to Kentucky, maybe like around like 2012, 2013, for school. And I didn't really have a lot of experience going to like underground shows. So like I lived off of 65 just above Nashville. And so one of the first couple underground shows I ever went to was like a couple of Yautja shows. Like I think I went to a Songs of Descent release show at the Stone Fox with like Ramming Speed and Cove, and was like blown away.
Wow, yeah, rest in peace, Stone Fox too.
Aww.
It was crazy. Like that play. Sorry.
I said that's awesome. Yeah, that was a good time to be around Nashville too. It's like obviously like city scenes kind of wax and wane, whatever. But that was a good time there.
And then maybe even like I think I looked it up. I think it was like 10 years ago around this time. It was a very early cult leader show at Cafe Coco with
the legendary Cafe Coco back room. Yeah. Like, funny, like what a spot. I remember we played there with Weekend Nachos too. I was just because they're kind of coming back and playing shows right now.
Right.
I was looking at photos from a show we played with them there, and just chaos,
I couldn't believe I drove down with because I think they also played that show Demeanor in their like really shitty van, and just like couldn't believe a spot like that existed where you have like all these people kind of from all backgrounds just like enjoying their coffee, and then like in the back room there's just this like hardcore show going on. It's insane.
It very much was like a hardcore punk speakeasy back there, because you walk in to the front of this cafe where there's like college kids like studying and like MacBooks abound, and then you walk into the store and there's like some grind band from like New York playing. Like, what? All right.
I say all this to ask, I guess, like, how did you find extreme music? Was there maybe an older person in your life? How did you find yourself in DIY circles?
I feel like I found, like new metal and like very accessible, like heavy extreme music at a young age, just kind of like through the radio and TV and whatever. And maybe through friends at school, but I think like later middle school, definitely my older brother and I kind of got into it at the same time. Like the internet and file sharing kind of exploding, and then just kind of like feeling out the city we lived in and kind of figuring out that there was music and these DIY spots, all ages spots. But yeah, I didn't really have an older person in my life or a parent or like, someone close to me besides my older brother. And we just kind of got into it together. Lots of Napster, into other nefarious file sharing services, into SoulSeek. And then like, once I was in high school and had friends who could drive, it was like we were going to the DIY spot in Birmingham, not to see specific bands, just because we saw there were shows happening. We're like, hey, there's a show this Friday night. What do these bands sound like? Let's go to their MySpace page. Let's go to mp3.com and see if they have this. But yeah, that was kind of how I got into it. The new metal into punk and hardcore path for me, and then the rest is history, I guess.
I'm not like super, admittedly, like I'm not super familiar with the scene in Birmingham. Like the person that comes to mind recently is like, I've been listening to the new Waxahachie record, I guess. But like, what was the music scene like? Like what sorts of bands were you going to see?
I mean, there was a venue called Cave 9 that was like, at that time, and to some bands, like a legendary spot. But all kinds of bands, like Birmingham has an awesome art and music scene, metal, punk, hardcore, into, indie rock, folk music, etc. But yeah, there's a place called the Firehouse now that is like, has been a DIY venue for over 15 years. And it's also like, they do music lessons there, and there's a studio there. It's definitely a hidden gem, but I think that people are, over the years, are starting to slowly realize it's like a spot not to miss. But yeah, I feel super lucky to have like grown up in a super fostering DIY scene, and I feel like you can't get that with a bigger city. It's kind of like everything's a little bit more separated and clicky, even if it's unintentional. Like everyone was kind of doing stuff together, very mixed bills, like people showing you how to screen print, people showing you how to run sound and everything. Yeah, I feel super, super lucky to have grown up in the Birmingham DIY scene. And it opened up a lot of doors for me too, to like tour and what, what I'm doing now.
Ray, you're from Fairfax. Is that outside of DC?
It is. It's just like a sad suburb of DC.
I mean, I like let's see who's from like I've been listening to like a lot of like Brain Tourniquet, and maybe I kind of mentioned like maybe some of the stuff that like Chris Moore was involved with, like Magruder Grind.
This is cool. I actually have more of like a connection weirdly to the Richmond type stuff that's going on. I went to high school with a lot of people that ended up in Richmond and are doing really cool music stuff there. Like one of my biggest musical influences in high school and I guess middle school too, is my friend John Krogan. They play drums, they play in Listless and Ostraka and Gift from God. All those are cool Richmond bands. My friend from high school who we used to jam with, Brian Russo's, and I think a couple of those bands as well. But yeah, a lot of the people that I used to jam with and who gave me a lot of music recommendations ended up in Richmond altogether. But like John Krogan showed me Tool and Primus and like Mono and Mogwai and Godspeed You Black Emperor.
Damn.
And just all this stuff that ended up being like hugely influential on me. And yeah, I really can't thank them enough for that, but I have tried. But yeah, like that, like those people in high school are like very influential to me. And we'd go to like Strangeland Records and see Salome perform, and that was really crazy. And like, because Catherine Katz ended up being in Agoraphobic Nosebleed for a while.
Yeah.
That was really cool. Because I'd like see her at Fair Oaks Mall and be like too afraid to talk to her. So yeah, that was always fun. But I wish that I'd grown up in Birmingham because it definitely seems like more of a like wholesome but still fun, like still a fun time and a cool way to kind of grow up and have an experience playing live music in like a nurturing but still realistic atmosphere. Whereas like Fairfax, I don't know, man. I really don't have anything good to say about that place. There's no love lost. Like, I'll never go back by choice. Like, fuck it.
But it is wild to like, I feel like I identify with that a little bit, like being from just like kind of a bland western suburb of Chicago, where somehow one way or another we both found ourselves like in this sort of circle and like listening to this like sort of music. Like it's pretty wild. Like I'm curious, what was maybe your first shows or concerts that you went to? It could be heavy or not. What was the first show you went to?
I went to I want to think. Like I went to a couple of shows before this, but one that really stands out because it was like my freshman year of high school. It was like the first week of school. I made friends with someone who wanted to go see the Dandy Warhols at the 9:30.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't really know how I'm going to swing this. I have a very overprotective mom. Like, I don't know, like, what to do here. But luckily, the name Dandy Warhols, like, she thought that it would be kind of like milquetoast, whatever, indie rock, which no comment. And I ended up going with her, and it was really cool. But I was so, like, far removed from, at that moment, so far removed from, like, being in bands, from being, like, a rock and metal musician, that like all I had done was play classical piano and like, I don't know, mess around on whatever. So she was like, look at the bassist. And I was like looking and I was like, which one is the bassist? Which one is the bassist? Like, which one is the bass? Fuck. Oh my God, what is happening? And my brain was like exploding and I was so stressed. And I remember I went home and I Googled like bass guitar. And then I was like, you knew it was the one with 4 strings. Why did you freak out? But from there, that was a catalyst for me wanting to go to more shows because 9:30 Club is a cool venue. And I was like, it might be cool to see a cool band here. So yeah, I started going to more shows after that. But that was like the first like real kind of a show I went to. I started going to DIY shows maybe like my junior, senior year of high school. There weren't a lot. The main place to go see rock and metal, other than going into DC to like Black Cat, Rock and Roll Hotel, 9:30 Club, what have you, was this place called Jack's in Springfield. And I think now it's called Empire or like Kingdom or like something. But that was like the spot where like your metal band could pay to play, and you could like, get your parents and like 6 of your friends to come out at 4 o'clock on a Sunday to like see you play for 10 minutes, whatever. That was the place where you would go see metal, was at Jack's, and I would go there a lot. But yeah, I really wish there had been a Cave 9 or a Firehouse type situation for me. There was a place in, I think, Annandale/Fairfax called the Firehouse, or the Old Firehouse, which was, I think, an old firehouse where people were starting to go and play like DIY shows when I was leaving high school and like when I'd come home from college and whatever. But I never went, and I don't think that scene has really taken off. And I'm not sure about DC either, which is like the obvious next place to go. But yep, what a time.
Kayhan, what was the first show you ever went to?
Oh man, I think the first show I ever went to for real was to see that band Seven Dust. I don't know.
Oh hell yeah!
Like I think I convinced my mom to let me go with my friend Carter, who was mentioned earlier, to go see that, like the smaller stage at this local amphitheater. And I remember being so bummed because he went to a show either right after that or before that, and I thought I was going to go, but then for some reason my mom or parents stopped me. But it was Tool with the Melvins opening.
Oh my God, what?
I'm like, that would have changed my life.
Yeah.
But yeah, Seven Dust. And then I remember like, I went to one day of Furnace Fest. My older brother went like all 3 days, but I went one day and saw a few bands that were like, whoa, this is wild. Like I remember seeing Norma Jean and like an early version of like Terror and Evergreen Terrace, just like some weird metalcore bands. But yeah, like I think going to see those DIY shows and like seeing bands play on the floor, and like seeing people who are like not that much older than you who are like touring and like putting out their own music and stuff. I remember there was this band that had a couple people from Birmingham in it, but also some people from Georgia, Atlanta area. They were called Of Means and Ends, and they were like this kind of scramsy, kind of like spastic, like grindcore-ish band. It was kind of like Circle Takes a Square, kind of Blood Brothers-ish, just like weird, like 3 guitar players blasting drums, like a sassy singer and like a scary singer and like getting in people's faces. And I remember seeing that early on in high school and just being like, what the hell is this? and then like me and all my friends being captivated, like while it's going on, you're like trying to process it and you're like, am I scared? Am I into this? Like, what's happening? This is crazy. I've never seen a band like this. But then afterwards you're like, oh wow, I can go talk to the people who just did this and like buy their little CDR demo. And like shows like that were like my first show in my mind for real. Not the Seven Dust show at the Oak Mountain Amphitheater.
It's definitely a different beast. And yeah, I mean, definitely going to some of those, like I said, early shows in Nashville at like, I don't know, like the Owl Farm or whatever, like never being exposed to some of that stuff before was like life-changing. I'm curious, kind of a similar question. First record you ever owned, whether heavy or non, whatever. Like, I'd just love to know, what was the first record you remember having in your youth?
I mean, I remember specifically going to, trying to think of purchased on my own. Well, I got a boombox CD player stereo system that me and my brother shared for Christmas one year. And I know that came with Dance Hits Megamix 96.
Hell yeah.
And an ESPN CD called Jock Jams, I believe.
Oh yeah. 96 is really where it found its groove, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think I was telling someone about this the other day. I remember going on a road trip with my family and my mom letting me pick out a CD, and she picked up a Bjork CD and was like,
wow.
I think this is what like college kids are listening to now. And I was like, no, I don't want that. So I bought Tub Thumping by Chumbawamba.
Hell yeah.
So maybe that was my first actual like intentional on my own CD purchase. Unfortunately.
My mom used to take me to Tower Records like every couple of weeks to spend my allowance on a CD. And the first CD that I ever bought with my own money was the Tarzan original soundtrack with because Phil Collins did that shit and it's incredible. And after that, my mom was like, this dude sings in other bands and by himself too, like other stuff. So she showed me Genesis and like Phil Collins solo stuff, and I was like blown away. Love Phil Collins. And the second CD I ever bought with my own money was the Rent Broadway original cast recording because I thought those songs were great and I didn't know what any of them meant. But I remember when I was at the record or at Tower for one of those, I saw Matchbox 20. Was it Matchbox 20 or was it? No, it's Coldplay. Coldplay had that album like A Rush of Blood to the Head or whatever.
Yeah.
And I thought that sounded like metal as fuck. And I was like, Coldplay, A Rush of Blood to the Head. Like, I don't know. I thought brutal. It sounded like brutal as hell. And then later hearing Coldplay and being like, what? But yeah, so those were like definitely the first two CDs I got. And then I distinctly remember asking for Astro Lounge by Smash Mouth one year for like my birthday or for Hanukkah or something.
Hell yeah. That's pretty funny in itself. Like there could be a whole category of like titles that sound like hard as shit, but are like actually soft. And
yeah, totally.
I was curious too. I noticed that you having found, heavy music, hardcore metal, you became a staff writer, interviewer, and kind of you work through metalreview.com.
Ah, yes, formerly known as Metal Review, now Last Rights.
Okay, interesting. I was trying to find maybe some of the interviews that you had done. Was there any particular artist that you were like, that you interviewed that you were like crazy stoked on? Like any particular person that you got to interview that was maybe stands out in your mind?
Oh yeah, big time. So you can probably find this if you look. Like, I don't know what happened to their YouTube. Like some stuff happened when they integrated it, but other sites like picked it up, whatever. It exists in the world. I got to interview Devin Townsend.
Oh, damn.
It was like he was on tour with like Children of Bodom and like some other shit. He was like the opener, I think, on that. I don't hate Children of Bodom, and I didn't hate them then either, but I'm just saying he was the outlier on that tour. And I think that he was like first or second of like 4 or 5 on a big package. It wasn't like his stuff. It was a little bit before he fully blew up as like a headliner type act. So anyway, I still love Devin Townsend, but at the time that I got to interview him, I was like 19 or 20 and like obsessed and so excited. And it's a video interview. And I'm like wearing my little Metal Review shirt and I'm just like, what was it like being the best person in the world? Like, I don't remember what I asked him, but it went well. Like, it was really fun, and he was so kind and gracious. And I do think I made one joke about like he was drinking something in a cup that like, one of those standard cups that has little pictures of coffee cups on it.
Yeah.
And I was like, is that the universe's like ultimate cup of coffee? Because like that's a Ziltoid reference from like an album of his. It's like it's a very like obvious reference, but a nerdy thing to say. And he was like, it's decaffeinated tea. And I was like, oh. But the rest of it went fine from there. And yeah, that was like something that I was like losing sleep over, incredibly excited about. And then it happened and it was great. So like, yeah. And then a couple months later, I interviewed Anvil, and those dudes for comedians they were not in a good mood. They were not having a good day. And that's also a video interview. And then there was one with Arch Enemy, and they were great. They were awesome. That was before they swapped singers. Angela was still in the band. It was great. They were so nice.
That's so cool. Yeah, Devin Townsend seems like such a goofball of a person. I can't imagine he'd be
super goofy, but incredibly like self-aware and very like well-spoken and very calm. Like I think he's around a lot of people where he means a lot to them, and he doesn't take that lightly. He's definitely like a hero for a hero for the outcast, but not like woe is me, like I'm an outcast because I asked that girl out and she said no, but like I'm an outcast because I really have some stuff going on. I think he does speak to that demographic, and he's a responsible person in that regard.
Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time here. Ray, having been in the Chicagoland scene for quite some time now, and Kayhan, I know you've been playing here forever, and you've lived here for a couple years now. I'm curious, and maybe you alluded to this a little earlier in the interview, but spending as much time being like kind of integrated in the scene, how do you feel like maybe things have changed from that initial kind of like entryway into it, or has it gotten better? Has it gotten worse? Are there bands you love? Are there spaces that you love to play? I'd love to hear your take on what the Chicagoland scene means to you.
I mean, yeah, like I've always loved playing Chicago. I can't really like. There are bigger cities that, in my mind, I'm like, wow, like we played one good show in this place out of like 10 good shows. Chicago was always pretty consistently good shows since I first started playing here. Like places I like playing now, I like Empty Bottle. I played a show at this DIY spot, Empty Bliss, recently. That was really fun. Played at Cole's Bar. It essentially feels like a DIY show. It's like just a dive bar with like a small room in the back. But I don't know, like obviously punk and hardcore have evolved to be, and DIY music to be like way more accessible, and like those types of music are, you know, more mainstream and popular now in some ways, while still having, you know, mostly underground bands. But I don't know. I think the pros and cons of that kind of just level things out to me. You know, like I feel like it's really easy to be like, oh, I miss it when it was like more like this and like less like this. I kind of do hate, you know, any type of business, you know, especially in a traditional sense, those kind of vibes and ethics invading those spaces always makes me feel kind of funny and weird. Like obviously I've toured with bands who had booking agents and like even tried having managers and whatever, and then dipped my toes into that world. But I still love just the idea of starting a new band or a project and like playing a DIY show and putting out, you know, your own music is like so appealing to me. Like, you know, I've kind of lived since I was like 15 or 16. I've been playing shows and touring and booking bands and all that stuff. And like, I've made this my life, and it's never been like my sole source of income. Like, obviously I would love for that to be the case, but I think when I started doing it and how it's all evolved to now, like it still scratches that itch for me. It still appeals to me to do it in its purest form, I guess. But yeah, I feel like I can do, like, Immortal Bird just played Metro this past weekend, you know, but like I played the DIY spot a couple weeks ago. So it's like, I like doing both things. Maybe that's like the evolution of it for me.
Yeah. Ray, thoughts? Any, I mean, you've spent quite a bit of time here. How do you feel like the scene's evolved over that time?
It's kind of hard for me to see it through the same lens as maybe somebody like Kayhan, because I moved here when I don't know if I was 21 yet, or I had just turned 21. And the way that I was treated starting a band and being someone who had already been a touring musician already, I feel like I was definitely treated differently because of my perceived gender and my youth and a few other factors. In some ways, I feel like I was coddled. In other ways, I feel like I was, you know, I'm putting this in air quotes, even though you can't see, like groomed, because I was an adult, but I was a young adult. And in some ways, I feel like I was deliberately cut down. So it's like, you know, there was a mix of genuine support, some very creepy stuff, and then some very outright kind of just struggling to find the word, but some very outright just negative behavior. But overall, like playing shows has always been a decent and fun experience. The venues here are solid. The bands here, they change pretty frequently, but they remain solid. I think that there's been a cool shift kind of over to more like punk and hardcore and more like artsy experimental metal, like more DIY type stuff. Maybe that's stemming a little bit from COVID, and that like do-it-yourself ethic is more pronounced. I just kind of like overall am not really trying to like play any kind of a game or like sacrifice any kind of personal ethics, even if that's just by staying quiet and not like saying anything one way or the other. Like, I don't know, I'm just kind of tired of it. I'm tired of the undefined stakes, and I'm tired of the weird personal politics feeding into things. I just, like Kayhan was saying, I want to try to make music on our terms and work with people who align with us, even just like on a professional level. Like I feel like overall the standards for professionalism across the board, musically, on the publicity end, on the booking end, on every end, has been slipping. So I think we all need to step it up, and all kind of maybe examine our approach and our motivations for being involved in this space.
I agree. You do have an excellent show coming up, I will say. I'm so stoked to be there at the Empty Bottle, Tuesday, June 25th. You're going to be playing with Pains from Rockford, our friends of the show, Stomach,
Yes.
Blood Nymph. This is going to be your tape release show as well.
Mm-hmm.
Those look like they came out so sick. I ordered mine, but I haven't gotten mine yet, but I'm looking forward to it. It looks so cool.
They will ship before the show. Yeah, we're really excited about that. The lineup came together well. Pains was, it was difficult to confirm them. They have a fill-in bassist for the show, but I'm really, really, really excited to play with them. They're so heavy, and Blood Nymph is really cool. And Stomach is going to be very inspiring as a super, super, super heavy two-piece. And like John from Weekend Nachos and Stomach is a longtime bud of both of us.
Is John on the debut record? Immortal Bird? Doesn't he like do guest vocals on that?
Yeah, on the debut full length on Empress Abscess, he does a guest verse on Neoplastic. Yeah, he came to Bricktop, and we did that with Pete, and it was really fun.
That's so cool. I'm interested. Do you have perhaps any other shows lined up this year, or maybe there's something you're working on? I know Immortal Bird's busy as well. Maybe, what sorts of things do you hope to accomplish this year?
I hope that Wretched Blessing will play a few more shows, like out of town, maybe do a small focused tour. We don't want to force anything because we just want to write more music and hopefully maybe put something else out before the end of the year. But we do want to be a live outfit and not just play in Chicago. Oh my gosh, wait, there is another show. We did book another show. It's not announced yet, but we have another show in August in Chicago. It's going to be really cool. It's a very, very different bill from our tape release, but super cool. So we're really excited about that. But beyond that, we don't have anything booked just yet. We want to see if we can maybe write and record 2 or 3 more songs.
That's awesome. Where can people keep up to date with all the things surrounding Wretched Blessing?
We're kind of keeping it minimal with the socials. And by that, we still have 3 different forms of social media, I guess. If you count YouTube, which I suppose if you want to watch our video for Here on Earth, our Spy Kids 2 sample, you can go on our YouTube. But for anything involving dates and stuff, Instagram, fortunately, for what it's worth, is the best spot. That's just at Wretched Blessing. And then we also have Bandcamp, which is the integral place to go if you want to get music or our tape. And we also are linked up with Songkick. So unless it gets messed up, that is also where you can see where we have shows. And our Bandcamp is just wretchedblessing.bandcamp.com.
Hell yeah. Real quick, I'd like to maybe end. Let's punish each other a little bit here really quick. Ray, what makes Kayhan the perfect collaborator and writing partner for a project like this?
Well, he is just a very multifaceted, very talented person, and he has so much patience, and that extends in both directions. Like, he is patient when he is trying to explain something, if maybe I'm not understanding it, and he's very patient if I am explaining something or doing something that he doesn't understand. He's able to just redirect, ask different questions, and get us thinking about something the same way. And he's just such a solid musician. Like, I've just admired his playing and his vocals for so many years. It's so cool to finally be in a band together. He knows how to get things done. We both have kind of been the band dad and the main person who is like handling both like business stuff and just kind of the more of the formalities of being a band. So he understands that. So yeah, collaborating is just really, really easy musically and on kind of the back end too.
Kayhan, what makes Ray the perfect collaborator and writing partner?
Just speaking for like talent and musical knowledge alone is like such an asset. Like, I don't know, almost intimidated going in and like worrying about if I can like even explain what I'm trying to play or write with Ray, because their musical knowledge is like so deep. And the fact that like we went in there the first time and like Ray just jump behind the drum kit and it's like can blast and play double kick, and I'm like, I haven't seen you do this, and like we've been together for a year and a half. Like what? Oh, you could just like jump in there and turn that on like that. Yeah, it was awesome. And like like living with a partner who you're writing music with is definitely super beneficial. We can write whenever we want to and bounce ideas off each other, lyrically and musically. It's great.
That's awesome. Well, the Wretched Blessing self-titled EP is out now. There's cassettes available on the Bandcamp still? Pre-orders?
Yeah, it's still a pre-order, but they do ship the first week of June, and we have some left. And if we run out before the tape release, we will get more in a cool color.
Heck yeah, that's going to be Tuesday, June 25th at the Empty Bottle in Chicago. Pain, Stomach, Blood Nymph, Wretched Blessing. Tickets for that can be found at the Empty Bottle website. Wretched Blessing, Ray and Kayhan, thank you so much for joining me this week. I really appreciate you guys taking the time out to talk to me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Anytime. This has been Vocal Distortion. You can follow us Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Riff Worship Pod. We'll be back next week live 6 p.m. Central. Until then, we'll catch you later.